Good evening. You've read the news stories, bought your copies of the book, watched the ABC primetime special, morning television, and even The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. And now, tonight, live from the Kennedy Library, where this oral history was so carefully housed for the past half-century, we'll hear directly from Jacqueline Kennedy about her life with our 35th president, and from their daughter, who has brought this fresh new history to light. I'm Tom Putnam, director of the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum, and on behalf of Tom McNaught, executive director of the Kennedy Library Foundation, members of our foundation board, many of whom are here with us tonight, and all of my library and foundation colleagues, I thank you for coming, and all those watching on C-SPAN, and acknowledge the generous underwriters of the Kennedy Library Forums, lead sponsor Bank of America, Boston Capital, the Lowell Institute, the Boston Foundation, and our media partners, the Boston Globe and WBUR. The opening text panel of our new exhibit, In Her Voice, Jacqueline Kennedy, The White House Years, which pairs this new oral history with never-before-seen documents and artifacts from our collection, reads, Jacqueline Kennedy had a rare combination of gifts: intelligence, courage, discipline, artistic creativity, and a style all her own. She had an adventurous spirit and was an accomplished horsewoman who lived life at full gallop. The oral history provides us with many of Mrs. Kennedy's personal recollections and insights, and I hope you will allow me to comment on just one. When asked by Arthur Schlesinger, whose son Andrew is here with us this evening, about where the president best relaxed, Mrs. Kennedy replied, it was while sailing. He loved the sun and the water and not the phone. And she remembers JFK as blissfully happy with the wind blowing his hair, and adds, it was for him what getting out on a horse was for me. Through her thoughtful foreword to the book and some of her mother's recollections, we also learn about Caroline Kennedy, whose presence animates this institution like no other, and whose steady leadership has put this library in the forefront of the presidential library system in providing worldwide access to archival collections. We learn of the adventure stories her father told Caroline as a young girl, stories about two ponies, White Star and Black Star. As he wove these tales, the president would let her pick which horse she wished to ride and ask which of her cousins should race on the other. In an interview in Parade magazine, Caroline describes often choosing Stevie Smith as her adversary, whose father this hall is named for. And when asked by the interviewer if she was always the heroine in JFK's stories, she quipped, of course. Would you want to go to bed thinking that Stevie Smith triumphed over you? We will open tonight with a brief introduction from the triumphant horsewoman in our midst. After Caroline's comments, our panel will feature Michael Beschloss, described by Newsweek as the nation's leading presidential historian, who wrote the introduction to this new book, as well as its extensive annotations, and Richard Donahue, a member of the Kennedy administration, the vice chair of the Kennedy Library Foundation Board of Directors, who knew and worked with Jacqueline Kennedy in the White House, here in Massachusetts, and during the 1960 campaign. We're delighted to have Ted Widmer, a former speechwriter for President Bill Clinton, and now director of the John Carter Brown Library at Brown University, as the evening's moderator. Towards the end of the program, we'll take written questions from the audience. There are index cards available, and staff will collect them from you. Let me note a few other special guests who are here with us tonight, including Vicki Kennedy, Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, Sidney Lawford McKelvey, Stephen Smith himself, and two former Kennedy administration officials who both happen to be my predecessors as director of this library, Charles Daly and Dan Fenn. Also joining us this evening is Jim Gardner, who, among other duties, oversees the presidential library system for the National Archives. A nation reveals itself by the men and women it produces, JFK once stated, and in Jacqueline Kennedy, this nation produced a most remarkable woman. Among the many compliments one can bestow on this new book is that it is truly revelatory of her extraordinary life, keen wit, and historical accomplishments. As Maureen Dowd noted in a recent column, who else could read War and Peace during the Wisconsin primary? Persuade the French to lend the Mona Lisa to the U.S., the only time it has ever left France, and encourage White House chefs to serve French cuisine at state dinners rather than Irish stew. In its editorial, the Boston Globe praised Caroline for publishing this oral history and demonstrating her trust in the general public and posterity to judge these recordings for themselves. She is, for many of us, our own gallant knight, still astride White Star, galloping through these troubled times on behalf of the causes her parents believed in, not the least of which is an appreciation of history. Much is revealed, Caroline writes in the foreword to the new book, by her mother's statements, her tone, and even her pauses. And the same can be said of the decision to publish this oral history by the daughter that Jacqueline Kennedy raised so well. Ladies and gentlemen, Caroline Kennedy.
Thank you all for coming. I want to thank the staff of the library and the foundation for the stewardship and the tremendous care and dedication that they show every day here at the library, and the board members who are here and people that I've worked with over the years, and especially the members of my family who are here. It means so much to me, and I think it's a wonderful tribute to our parents that we're all here together. So thank you all. Most importantly, it means a great deal that 50 years after my father's presidency, so many people still share his vision for America and are interested in learning about his administration. His time is really becoming part of history rather than living memory. Yet President Kennedy's words, his spirit, and his example remain as vital as ever. Now, when young people often feel disconnected from politics, it is up to us as adults to reach across the generations and recommit ourselves and our country to the ideals he lived by. For my family and the Kennedy Library, the goals of these anniversary years are to stimulate interest in public service and use the power of history to help us solve the problems of our own time. We've undertaken a number of important projects. We've created the largest presidential digital archive, in which my father's papers are now available online worldwide so that people can study his decisions and see history in the making. We've launched the JFK 50th website, which includes downloadable exhibits and curriculum for students, and where kids can upload testimonials about their own public service in the spirit of JFK. We've sponsored conferences on the presidency, civil rights, scientific innovation, and the space program, and the quest for nuclear disarmament, all issues that continue to shape our national destiny. And as you all know, we've published the 7 interviews my mother gave in 1964 as part of an oral history project in which more than 1,000 people were interviewed about my father's life and career. When these interviews were completed, she sealed the audio tapes here at the Kennedy Library and put the transcripts in a safe deposit vault in New York. Though she often spoke of them to me and John, few other people knew of their existence, and she never gave another interview on the subject. The underlying goal of the Oral History Project, which was the largest of its kind at the time, was to capture recollections while they were fresh, before the stories had been told a million times or become overly mythologized. No one interview was expected to be complete or comprehensive, but together with the underlying documentary record and historical archive housed here at the Kennedy Library, it was hoped that they might form a composite picture that would be valuable in later years. To me, their most important value is that they make history come alive. They give us a glimpse of the human side of the people in the White House and remind us that they are just as imperfect as the rest of us. People have been surprised that my mother, who was so famously private, participated in this project and gave it her full commitment. But to me, it makes perfect sense. My parents shared a love of history. As a child, my father was sick a great deal. While his brothers and sisters were out playing football, he spent hours reading in bed. I have his books on British parliamentary history, the Federalist Papers, the American Civil War, and the great orators of ancient times. My mother preferred novels, poetry, and memoirs. As Tom said, she read War and Peace during the Wisconsin primary. 2 bleak winter landscapes. She has some nice things to say about Wisconsin also.